how does a high school math teacher with absolutely zero financial credentials, a guy who was actively fired for poor performance, how does he become a billionaire?
Right.
And we're not just talking about some quiet, under-the-radar billionaire here. We are talking about someone with a private island, a whole fleet of private jets, and the apparent ability to control the absolute most powerful people on Earth. It is a mind-bending contradiction.
It really is.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you are joining us today, you are probably someone who wants to get to the absolute bottom of incredibly complex stories without, feeling completely overwhelmed by the sheer avalanche of information out there. And that is exactly what we are here to do for you today.
It's a dark, sprawling, and truly labyrinthine story.
Oh.
Our mission today is to unpack the entire rise of Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to look at the systemic failures that protected him for decades, and most importantly, we're going to break down the explosive revelations from the material we are analyzing today.
The new material.
Right. This deep dive focuses on the massive, unprecedented release of over 3.5 million Epstein files. This is a data dump that, according to our primary documents, detonated on the public on January 30, 2026.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we go a single step further, we really need to issue a very clear warning.
Absolutely.
The material we are diving into today contains some highly politically charged content. It explores geopolitical conspiracy theories that heavily implicate major global figures on, well, both the left wing and the right wing of the political spectrum.
Exactly. And I want to firmly state for you, the listener, that we are absolutely not taking sides here. We are not endorsing the political viewpoints, the overarching theories, or the specific futuristic timelines presented in these documents.
Right, not at all.
Our role today is strictly to act as your impartial guides. We are simply conveying, synthesizing, and analyzing the ideas and timelines exactly as they are laid out in the original text. Nothing more and nothing less.
Perfectly said. So let's start with what we might call the impossible resume. We all know the basic Wall Street origin story, but what this material highlights isn't how Epstein made his money. It's how he perfected the art of failing upward.
Failing upward, yeah.
He was born in Brooklyn in 1953 to a working-class family. He was a math prodigy, gets into Cooper Union, but he drops out. Yet somehow, he lands a job teaching math to the children of the global elite at Manhattan's highly prestigious Dalton School.
Which is incredibly hard to do even with a degree.
Right. But here is the detail that sets the stage for everything. He wasn't fired from Dalton for inappropriate behavior back then. The board fired him simply because he was a terrible teacher.
What's fascinating here is how that failure didn't stall him. It actually acted as a launch pad. Even as a subpar teacher, he managed to network with the powerful, wealthy parents of his students.
Unbelievable.
And that networking got him a job at the major Wall Street firm Bear Stearns. He was hired by a man named Alan Greenberg. Now, the documents note that Greenberg had a very specific, almost cynical hiring philosophy.
Oh yeah, the PSDs.
Exactly. He favored what he called PSDs, meaning people who were poor, smart, and desperate to be rich. Epstein fit that psychological profile perfectly. In an incredibly bizarre ascent, he went from a lowly floor trader to a limited partner in just 4 years.
4 years.
4 years before abruptly being fired for financial fraud.
It's the ultimate Wall Street irony. The Dalton School fires him for being a terrible teacher, and Bear Stearns looks at that exact resume and says, perfect, give this guy millions of dollars to trade.
Right.
It's just a spectacular indictment of 1980s finance culture. Which brings us to his first massive scam. In the 1980s, Epstein gets involved with a man named Stephen Hoffenberg in something called Towers Financial Corporation.
Yeah.
On paper, it was a medical debt collection agency. In reality, it was a staggering Ponzi scheme, one of the biggest in American history prior to Bernie Madoff. But here's the real aha moment for you.
The timing.
Yes. Epstein mysteriously walked away from the company 3 years before the government finally exposed the scam. Hoffenberg took the fall, getting sentenced to 25 years in federal prison.
While Epstein just walks.
Epstein walked away with millions of dollars in his pocket and zero legal consequences.
It establishes a lifelong pattern of escaping accountability. Hoffenberg goes down, Epstein thrives. After Towers Financial, Epstein set up his own firm in the late 80s, claiming he would exclusively manage money for billionaires.
Just billionaires.
He didn't want millionaires. He wanted the absolute peak of the wealth pyramid. And this is where he hooks his biggest fish, Leslie Wexner, the wildly successful founder of L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secret.
Right.
The The material paints a vivid, almost unsettling picture of Wexner's psychology at the time.
Wait, I have to pause you right there because this detail blew my mind.
The book.
Yes! We are talking about one of the most ruthless, successful retail titans in American history. And the text claims Wexner was highly eccentric to the point where he believed a Dybbuk, which is a demon from Jewish mythology, actually lived inside him.
Yeah, it's wild.
He supposedly claimed this demon poked and prodded him, giving him this insatiable, anxious drive to accumulate massive wealth. And for reasons that baffled every single executive around him, Wexner handed over total absolute control of his vast personal finances and physical assets to Jeffrey Epstein.
Total control.
How does the author even begin to justify that level of delusion?
It speaks to Epstein's incredible talent for psychological mirroring and manipulation. He found a billionaire who was incredibly successful, but internally tormented. And Epstein essentially positioned himself as the cure to that anxiety.
I'll take the burden.
Exactly. He basically said, give me the keys to the kingdom and I will handle the burden. That immense financial backing from Wexner allowed Epstein to build his physical web of power. The mansions, the planes, the island.
Money was only half the equation, right?
Right. The other half was social access. And that is where Ghislaine Maxwell comes in. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a massive media mogul. But critically, European intelligence agencies heavily suspected him of being a double agent, working for both Israel and Russia, right up until he died under highly mysterious circumstances, falling off his yacht.
So it wasn't just high society networking. She was practically raised in a world of espionage tradecraft.
Precisely. Ghislaine took those elite, shadowy connections to New York and became the ultimate bridge. She is the one who introduced this former math teacher to British royalty, Saudi princes, and Hollywood elites.
She legitimized him.
She did. She legitimized him in circles where his money alone wouldn't have been enough.
But people did try to pull the fire alarm. Like in 2003, a journalist named Vicky Ward was putting together a massive investigation for Vanity Fair.
A great piece of journalism.
She uncovered that Epstein wasn't some Wall Street genius at all. He was basically a fraudster hiding behind elite connections. But far more importantly, she found two young sisters who were willing to go on the record alleging Epstein had abused them.
And the pushback she received was terrifying. Epstein allegedly intimidated the magazine's editor by having a bullet and the severed head of a dead cat left at their home.
A dead cat's head. That is just...
It's a shocking, psychopathic detail that shows the sheer ruthlessness he employed to protect his operation.
Yeah.
And it worked. The abuse allegations were entirely cut from the final piece. The tragic irony is that the remaining sanitized article just made him look like a ruthless, highly successful financial mastermind. It actually elevated his status among the elite.
And he used that elevated status to pivot to full-blown reputation laundering. He suddenly starts throwing around millions of dollars in donations to institutions like Harvard and MIT.
Buying prestige.
Exactly. He is hosting brilliant intellectuals like Stephen Hawking and Steven Pinker. He wasn't doing this because he suddenly developed a burning passion for astrophysics or cognitive psychology. He was buying a localized shield of respectability. And it gets so much darker. The documents detail his bizarre, almost eugenic plot to use a laboratory in New Mexico to essentially seed a better human race using his own DNA.
It reveals a monstrous level of narcissism and a god complex. But eventually, the shield of respectability began to crack. This brings us to the 2005 investigation in Palm Beach, Florida, sparked when the parents of a 14-year-old girl finally went to the local police.
Finally.
What the authorities discovered wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a highly organized pyramid scheme of abuse. Vulnerable, often impoverished girls were lured in, paid a few $100s for massages, and then paid extra if they recruited other vulnerable girls into the network.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely appalling.
Yeah.
Because the FBI got involved, launching Operation Leap Year. They had a mountain of evidence.
A literal mountain.
They had the victims, they had the ledgers. And yet, the Miami federal attorney, a man named Alexander Acosta, walks into a room with Epstein's high-powered lawyers in 2008 and brokers a completely secret, sealed, non-prosecution deal. It's hard to wrap your head around how a federal prosecutor just signs away an ironclad case like that.
The specifics of that sweetheart deal remain a staggering mockery of justice. Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 minor state charges, purely to shut down the sprawling federal probe.
Right.
He was sentenced to 18 months but served only 13. And he served them in a private wing of the county jail and was allowed to leave for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for work release.
He was essentially using the jail as a hotel.
Exactly. And the documents make a sharp point to note the trajectory of Alexander Acosta, the man who buried the federal case. He later became the Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump.
But the dam finally broke in 2018. Journalist Julie K. Brown published her phenomenal expose in the Miami Herald called Perversion of Justice.
Incredible reporting.
She did the work the government refused to do, bringing the stories of over 80 victims to the light. The public outcry was so immense that the government's hand was forced. Epstein was arrested again in July 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges.
But he never faced a trial.
No. He was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell on August 10, 2019.
The bizarre circumstances surrounding his death immediately shifted the global narrative from a criminal justice failure to a massive cover-up. The cameras in his specific cell block malfunctioned that exact night. His cellmate had been conveniently transferred out. This sparked massive global conspiracy theories.
Of course it did.
The text points out a specific tweet from Donald Trump at the time, which fanned the flames by suggesting Bill Clinton was somehow involved in Epstein's death. It was the perfect breeding ground for paranoia.
All of that historical impunity sets the stage for the real powder keg in these documents. Because while his death in 2019 supposedly closed the book, this source argues the true fallout didn't actually detonate until the futuristic timeline of January 2026.
Right, the alternate timeline.
Now remember, we are reporting this timeline exactly as it is laid out in the text. According to this narrative, Donald Trump is reelected as president in January 2025. Initially, he completely refuses to release the remaining Epstein files, reportedly calling them a fabrication orchestrated by his political opposition.
But the public pressure mounts, largely driven by a massive social media campaign. Elon Musk begins publicly pressuring Trump on X, questioning why the files are still being hidden from the American public.
Wow.
This grassroots pressure forces the U.S. Congress to pass a law in November 2025, legally mandating the unredacted release of the documents. And then, on January 30, 2026, the dam bursts. Over 3.5 million files are dumped onto the public internet.
And what those files revealed was Epstein's true business model. It wasn't finance, it was leverage.
Absolute leverage.
The text describes a literal blackmail vault. When authorities initially raided his Manhattan mansion, they found hidden cameras recording live feeds from every single bedroom and bathroom in the house. More chillingly, they found a safe full of CDs. Each CD was meticulously labeled with two things. First, the name of a young girl. Second, the name of a powerful global figure.
The implication is terrifyingly clear. Epstein was capturing high-definition footage of the world's most powerful people committing horrific acts and using that footage to exert unimaginable control over global systems.
Yeah.
And the January 2026 file drop finally attached names to that leverage.
The list of exposed elites is absolutely staggering, and it touches every sector of society. Let's go through some of the heavy hitters the documents highlight from this massive data dump. First, Elon Musk himself.
Right?
The files revealed 16 emails between Musk and Epstein from 2012 to 2013, with Musk specifically asking about the wildest party on Epstein's island.
Then there is Prince Andrew of the British royal family. We already knew he paid a £12 million settlement in 2022 to victim Virginia Giuffre, but the documents outline a deeply tragic timeline contained in these files.
Very tragic.
They state that Virginia Giuffre took her own life in April 2025, which led directly to a massive public reckoning, forcing King Charles to officially strip Prince Andrew of all his royal titles and permanently evict him from his royal residence in October 2025.
The files also heavily featured Bill Gates. They confirmed he flew on Epstein's private jet in 2013. Now, you have to remember, that was years after Epstein was a convicted sex offender.
There was no plausible deniability left at that point.
None. Melinda Gates specifically cited this ongoing, inexplicable relationship with Epstein as a primary catalyst for their divorce in 2021. And the files didn't just expose Western figures. There was a massive India connection that completely reframes Epstein's global reach.
Yes, the files revealed extensive strategic communications between Epstein and Indian billionaire Anil Ambani.
Right.
In 2014, Ambani was messaging Epstein, explicitly asking for introductions to Donald Trump's inner circle, specifically naming Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon. The timing noted in the text is critical here.
It really is.
It points out that Ambani visited Epstein's New York home on May 23, 2019. That happens to be the exact same day Prime Minister Narendra Modi won his re-election in India.
Wow.
It suggests Epstein was acting as a dark money diplomat, brokering geopolitical power behind the scenes at the exact moment global power was shifting.
The list just goes on and on. Google co-founder Sergey Brin, the renowned intellectual Noam Chomsky, author Deepak Chopra, billionaire Richard Branson. Look at the pattern of these names. He wasn't just collecting famous friends to stroke his ego.
Exactly. If you look closely, he was strategically capturing nodes of the future economy.
Yes.
He targeted tech innovators, biohealth philanthropists, international supply chain magnates, and political influencers. He was essentially building an index fund of human leverage. He wanted a piece of every major industry that would dictate the future of the globe.
Which brings us to the overarching geopolitical theory the author uses to explain all of this chaos.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text frames the entire Epstein saga through the lens of a global Cold War. The theory proposed is that Epstein wasn't acting entirely alone as a rogue operator.
Right.
He was a pawn, or perhaps a primary node, in a massive coordinated struggle for global control. The text describes a silent war between Western globalists who allegedly want to establish a single, unified global government and economy, and nationalist leaders around the world who want to maintain sovereign borders and independent economies.
And I think this is a crucial moment for us to put our neutral hats on for a second. The documents frame this entire conflict through a very specific, polarized lens. It categorizes leaders like Donald Trump, along with the leadership in Russia, India, and China, as the nationalist faction actively fighting this globalist agenda. Whether you or I agree with that specific geopolitical framing isn't the point. What matters is that this is the blueprint the author uses to explain why Epstein was protected by intelligence agencies for so long and why his eventual downfall was so catastrophic. The text describes this political landscape as a grim choice between bad and very bad, warning of a terrifying, inevitable clash between these two massive power blocks by the year 2030.
It is an incredibly bleak geopolitical assessment. The argument is that blackmail was the dark matter holding these global alliances together. When leaders are compromised, their nation's policies are compromised.
Right.
But whether you subscribe to that specific globalist versus nationalist theory or not, the underlying reality presented by the mechanics of the 2026 files remains undeniably dark.
So what does this all mean? When you take a step back from the individual names, the horrifying abuse details, and the sprawling political theories, the big takeaway from this deep dive into the material is this.
Yeah.
The Epstein files are not simply a historical record of unforgivable crimes against vulnerable young women. According to these documents, these files are the actual blueprints of a shadow economy.
A shadow economy.
An economy where leverage, hidden cameras, and human lives were the literal currency traded to control the absolute highest echelons of global power.
Which brings us to the end of our analysis, but this raises an important, deeply unsettling question for you to mull over on your own.
Oh, this is the big one.
The material places massive emphasis on that physical vault of blackmail material, the meticulously labeled CDs, the high-definition hidden camera footage from the bathrooms and bedrooms. It was the ultimate leverage used to keep the world's elite in line, dictating everything from tech investments to foreign policy. But if that vast physical library of blackmail was the true source of Epstein's immense power, what exactly happens to that leverage when the blackmailer dies?
Right.
Did his death in that Manhattan jail cell create a sudden power vacuum that finally set all those compromised elites free? Or did someone else, operating quietly in the shadows, simply walk in and pick up the keys to the vault?
That is a genuinely chilling thought to leave on. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us today. It is incredibly heavy material, but understanding how leverage and power operate in the shadows is the only way to make sense of the world we're living in. Keep questioning the narratives around you, stay wildly curious, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.